Job and Tech.
I'm going to call the meeting to order.
Planning.
I'm going to call the meeting to order. We have in attendance Townsend, Wade, Davies, Miller, Atkins, and Elliott. Is there anybody here from the public who would like to speak to the commission on an item that's not on our agenda for tonight? Seeing no one and seeing Benning come in, we have a full commission tonight. Our first item on the development is case number REZ 25-0016, location west of Weatherby Park and north of Sand Prairie Park. This is an application for rezoning of approximately 56.35 acres of land from low-density single-family residential zone with a planned development overlay to T3 Neighborhood Edge Zone for 9.62 acres, T3 Neighborhood General Zone for 37.5 acres, T4 Neighborhood Small Zone for 8.04 acres, and T4 Neighborhood Small Open Zone for 1.18 acres. Sam Broderson, you ready to take us forward?
Yes. Good evening. My name is Sam Broderson. I'm an associate planner with the Neighborhood and Development Services Department, and I will be presenting cases REZ 2516 and SUB 258, collectively known as the South Village Project. I will be presenting each case separately, and each case will require its own vote, but it is important to remember that they are each portions of the same project. The application for the rezoning and subdivision of 56.35 acres of land, also known as the South Village Project, will be the first major implementation of the City of Iowa City's form-based zoning code. In 2017, the city worked with a consultant to assess the feasibility of implementing missing middle housing and a form-based code for undeveloped areas of the city. In 2021, the City Council adopted an amendment to the zoning code to create new form-based zones and standards for the South District. This project will be the first major implementation of this form-based code in the South District. The form-based code sets standards for neighborhood design, building form, and land use within the form-based zones. These standards reflect the community's vision for implementing the intent of the comprehensive plan to ensure development that reinforces the highly valued character and scale of Iowa City's urban centers, neighborhoods, and corridors with a mix of housing, civic, retail, and service uses in a compact, walkable, and transit-friendly environment. The first case I will be presenting is REZ 2516, an application for the rezoning of 56.35 acres of land from low-density single-family residential with a planned development overlay zone to T3 Neighborhood Edge for 9.62 acres, T3 Neighborhood General for 37.5 acres, T4 Neighborhood Small for 8.04 acres, and T4 Neighborhood Small Open for 1.18 acres. Shown here is an aerial map of the subject property. Next, we have a zoning map of the subject property. The subject property is currently zoned low-density single-family residential with a planned development overlay. To the north, we have low-density single-family residential zoning. To the south, we have low-density single-family residential with a planned development overlay in Sand Prairie Park. To the west, we have low-density single-family residential with a historic district overlay in Sand Prairie Park. And to the east, we have medium-density single-family residential in Weatherby Park. To give you some background on this case, in 2004, the subject property was included in a 146.48 acre rezoning and preliminary plat that resulted in the subject property and surrounding areas being zoned OPD RS5. The planned development overlay was needed for this area to allow for clustered conservation design in order to preserve open space in sensitive areas. The planned development overlay allowed for narrower lots than what is typically permitted in an RS5 zone, which allowed the necessary design approach to preserve land and sensitive features. Between 2004 and 2022, final plat approval was given for 88.46 acres of the surrounding land. With the adoption of the 2021 form-based code for the South District, this rezoning is required in order to implement the form-based uses as shown in the South District future land use map. Here are a few photos of the project site as accessed from Sandusky Drive and Prairie Heights Drive. As the photos show, the area is currently undeveloped and borders single-family housing along the west, north, and east ends in Sand Prairie Park to the south. The 56.35 acres of property is currently zoned single-family residential with the planned development overlay. The current OPD RS5 zoning is not compatible with the form-based zoning requirement of the South District Plan. The request is to rezone the property to form-based zoning designations. The T3 Neighborhood Edge Zone is intended to provide a walkable neighborhood environment of detached, small to large building footprints, low-intensity housing choices from house large, duplex side-by-side, to cottage court, supporting and within short walking distance of neighborhoods serving retail, food, and service uses. The T3 Neighborhood General Zone is intended to provide a walkable neighborhood environment of small footprint, low-intensity housing choices from house small, duplex side-by-side, duplex stacked, cottage court, multiplex small to townhouse, supporting and within short walking distance of neighborhoods serving retail and services. The T4 Neighborhood Small Zone is intended to provide a walkable neighborhood environment of small to medium footprint, modern intensity housing choices from cottage court, multiplex small, courtyard building small to townhouse, supporting and within walking distance of neighborhood serving retail and services. The T4 Neighborhood Small Open Zone is a subzone of the T4 Neighborhood Small Zone. Subzones are a slightly modified version of the base form-based zone. The open subzone allows additional flexibility to design sites located at or near intersections that function or can function as a neighborhood node of non-residential uses. The open subzone is used to provide either or both of the following uses. 1, to allow more uses than the base zone allows in specific areas but within the same form and character of the base zone, and or 2, to more easily allow certain uses that are already allowed in the base zone. Here is the rezoning exhibit submitted by the applicant showing the subject area and proposed zoning. The 4 criteria the city uses to evaluate rezoning to form-based zones are 1, demonstration of compliance with the comprehensive plan and future land use map. 2, demonstration that the rezoning is organized in such a manner to respond appropriately to various site conditions. 3, demonstration that transitions are appropriate between form-based zones. And 4, demonstration that the rezoning is designed to suit specific constraints unique to the site. The following slides will summarize the staff's analysis of how the proposal meets this criteria. The South District Future Land Use Map provides a general development concept for the South District. The Future Land Use Map recommends the same zoning districts that are being proposed today. Looking at the Future Land Use Map from the IC 2030 Comprehensive Plan, the subject area outlined above is designated for residential uses at 2 to 8 dwelling units per acre, which aligns with the requested rezoning, which will provide approximately 4.7 dwelling units per acre. Additionally, the comprehensive plan has a list of goals and strategies that align with this request, such as to guide development away from sensitive features, to encourage a diversity of housing options, and for development of housing options on smaller lots that conserve land and allow for more affordable single-family housing. In terms of organization around various site conditions, the less intensive T3 Neighborhood Edge and T3 Neighborhood General zones have been organized around existing residential development to the north and southeast. The more intensive T4 Neighborhood Small and T4 Neighborhood Small Open zones have been organized around civic spaces and Weatherby Park. Areas with sensitive features have been organized to avoid development in these areas. By organizing the proposed zoning boundaries around existing features and site conditions, The proposed project has demonstrated appropriate organization of the proposed zones. The proposed rezoning has demonstrated appropriate transitions between form-based zoning designations. On blocks that are proposed to contain multiple form-based zoning designations, the transition between zones are separated by alleys to ensure that lots are fronted by parcels with identical zoning designations. There are portions of the proposed project where the T3 neighborhood edge lots are fronted by lots zoned T3 neighborhood general. However, the T3 neighborhood general lots are not facing the frontage of the T3 neighborhood edge lots, demonstrating that an appropriate transition exists between these zones. The proposed project has been designed to provide careful transitions between zoning designations while also respecting the unique conditions of the project site, such as existing infrastructure and topography. The proposed project has been designed to address the specific conditions of the project site. As previously discussed, the more intensive form-based zones have been organized around existing and proposed civic space, and areas of the project site with sensitive features have been organized to retain the sensitive features to the maximum extent possible. The area of the project site with an existing prairie remnant will be dedicated to the city for an extension of Sand Prairie Park, which contains an abundance of sensitive features. The portion of the property containing an archaeological buffer will be preserved through a conservation easement. The layout of streets and blocks within the project site have been designed to connect with the existing street network. Traffic calming measures will be implemented along blocks with a longer length to increase vehicle and pedestrian safety. Staff received one piece of correspondence related to this rezoning request. Staff is recommending approval of REZ 2516, a request to rezone approximately 56.35 acres of land from low-density single-family residential with the planned development overlay to T3 neighborhood edge for 9.62 acres, T3 neighborhood general for 37.5 acres, T4 neighborhood small for 8.04 acres, and T4 neighborhood small open for 1.1 acres, subject to the following conditions. Prior to the issuance of a building permit, owner shall install traffic calming measures along public streets subject to review and approval by the city engineer. Prior to the issuance of a building permit, owner shall install additional pedestrian connections into Weatherby Park as shown in the preliminary and final plat. And prior to the issuance of a building permit, owner shall install a fence along the portions of the property with residential lots bordering Sand Prairie Park, subject to review and approval by the Department of Parks and Recreation. This fence shall be installed at a minimum of 3 to 4 feet in height and shall consist of 3 to 4 wire tension style or hog tension style with wooden posts or other fence type approved by the city forester. Access points shall not be constructed along the length of the fence. In the event that the city coordinates with the owner for the city to install the fence, this condition shall be considered satisfied. In terms of next steps, the City Council will schedule the date for the public hearing at the next City Council meeting on March 10th. Following that, they will consider the rezoning at future meetings. Thank you for your time.
I'm going to start. I have a few questions. Is Sand Prairie Park then not open to the public? What's that?
So there's currently not access points. It's not necessarily closed to the public, but you would have to climb the fence to access Sand Prairie Park.
So it's not inviting.
No.
And if I could just add to that, that's intentional. We spoke with the city forester about this, and there's very sensitive prairie remnants and plant species that are very unusual, and they want to be preserved. It's like a sandy soil with interesting biodiversity, and so the city doesn't want lots of people walking through there because it could impact those plants.
Okay. Do you know, does the city have goals or standards for parks within neighborhoods? Like being on the Parks and Recs years ago, it struck me, I have in my memory that they try to have parks located so far within X number of miles of each neighborhood or something like that sticks in my mind. Do you know?
So there is the requirement to dedicate public open space if there's a subdivision that results in the creation of residential lots. Additionally, the form-based code does have specific civic space standards that I'll get into in my next presentation. As far as what standards the Department of Parks and Recreation uses, I'm not totally sure on that. Dan, do you?
I guess the one thing that I would add to what Sam said is that when we were working on the amendment to the South District Plan to incorporate the form-based land uses, we talked to Parks and Rec about where in this area would it make sense for more parks. And they didn't identify any in this particular area because of the location of Weatherby Park, but they did identify an area east of Sycamore Greenway where they felt it was needed to have additional park space.
Yet to come.
Yet to come.
Yeah, okay. The only other thing that I would ask is can you go back to the first couple maps that you looked at?
Sure. Moment. Visible.
Okay, wait.
These ones?
Go one more. Go forward. Stop there. Okay, so the P1 means park, and the P1 that's edging on Gilbert Street is the Sand Prairie Park.
Yeah, that middle section
Ungilt.
right here is Sand Prairie. This is Weatherby.
This,
This is
This is Sand Prairie, and that's Weatherby. Okay. Could you go back one? Oh gosh, go back another. When I'm looking at the map on the right, if you could put the streets on that in the future, it would save me a lot of time. Yeah, just a request. Yeah. Anybody else have questions?
Can you define maybe the intent of that open section a little bit more? I mean, I want to talk about some specifics, but I'm not sure when, if we want to talk about them in this portion or the platting portion where you get more specific. It's for rezoning, but it's all sort of tied together because we're rezoning different portions of it. So it's
That's related to my question too. If you could, because you mentioned the T4, what was it called? T4 open space in that
T4 neighborhood small open.
zone.
Yeah.
That was to allow a greater diversity of uses within that zone.
Yeah, there are
Like spelled out anywhere, or
it is spelled out in
Would be-
the form-based zoning code, but the open zones allow for a greater variety of uses than just the more residential uses for things like retail and services. Ideally, the open zones would be where those would be located.
gotcha. Okay, yeah, because in the more detailed plan, it seemed like they have the cottage court in those as well as the adjacent parcels, but but you're just saying that the ones that are zoned open, what's it called? Open, sorry.
Yeah, T4 neighborhood small open.
Yeah, T4 neighborhood, small open, those could, even though they're currently planned as cottage court typology, they could have like a little coffee shop or something that
Correct.
faces the shop because it has that specific designation. Okay.
Yeah, the cottage court is it sort of sounds like housing when you spell it out, but it's more of a building type, which again will be discussed a little bit more in the next presentation. But that sort of it refers to the form of
Yeah.
the structure,
More than
and
the use, yeah.
the open zone gives it more flexibility for use.
Cool.
Are there other uses allowed in the other form, like T3 neighborhood general and edge, or is it just those open spaces that allow for commercial spaces? are they all sort of permissible?
Not really commercial, but those other zones would allow things like daycares, churches, those types of uses,
Okay.
schools.
Can you talk a little bit about the intent to locate that T4 neighborhood small open next to the existing park? Is that sort of designed to bring commercial next to that park? Do you know? Have there been conversations with city staff kind of to shape this in any way?
Do you want to bring up the land use map? And I don't know, can you point out where it's shown on the future land use map?
It's shown in this area.
So the idea is that this is kind of a node. The destination for this area would be Weatherby Park, or it could be this potential non-residential area. So people from the park could easily access it, but also people who live further west.
Okay, that makes sense. Perfect.
Any other questions? Do we have the applicant here would like to talk, present?
Good evening, Commission. Excuse me. My name is Gina Landau. I'm with Navigate Homes. This has been a long time coming. I've been with Navigate for 2.5 years, and I've worked on it since the day I started at Navigate, and I know that it was in the works prior to that. Of course, you heard the background that Sam talked about with the city, with the form-based code. So this is something that's new for everyone. So it's been interesting to work through. I don't have much to say about the rezoning other than the fact that it just has to happen because the current zoning that Navigate had it zoned as does not work with the form-based code. So we were required to do this preliminary, this rezoning at first. And yes, so I don't have too much to say about that. If anyone has technical questions, because I am not an engineer, I do have 2 representatives from MMS Consultants, an engineer and a project manager. So if there's anything I can't answer, I will ask them to come up. So I am able to answer any questions that you have for me.
Looks like you're good.
Good, thank you.
And the public comment, please come up and state your name, sign in, and 5 minutes. You got 5 minutes.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Katie Gerlach, and I'm with Greater Iowa City, Inc. I'm here tonight to speak in strong support of the Planning and Zoning Commission's consideration of Navigate Homes rezoning applications. These proposals align squarely with Greater Iowa City's goals and strategies to increase housing supply, support thoughtful density, and make it easier rather than harder to deliver the kinds of housing our community needs. As Iowa City continues to grow, projects like this are essential to ensuring that we are adding homes in the right locations, at the right scale, and in the right ways that strengthen neighborhoods while expanding opportunity. Navigate Homes should be also commended for leaning into the city's form-based code and demonstrating how it can be used as intended to encourage predictable, high-quality development that fits its context and contributes to walkable, livable places. Form-based codes can be challenging to navigate, particularly for smaller or mission-driven developers. And Navigate's willingness to take this on helps show that these tools can be accessible, understandable, and effective when applied thoughtfully. This application reflects the type of partnership Iowa City has been working towards, where community goals, clear regulatory frameworks, and private sector leadership come together to deliver real outcomes. We encourage the Commission to view this rezoning as an example of the kind of forward-thinking and solutions-oriented development that advances housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Katie. Anyone else from the public?
Good evening. I wasn't sure if I should speak at this point or later on, so maybe I'll be back. But appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Amy Bauska. I live at 1049 Briar Drive. A long time ago, after September 11th, 2001, when the neighborhood first started talking about development, I was part of a neighborhood group that worked very closely with the City of Iowa City, with Southgate Development at that time, with the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation to look at a different type of development. And that led to the preservation of the Sand Prairie, or at least a portion of the Sand Prairie. And we're really grateful for that partnership. It took a lot of meetings, a lot of time. It took a lot of thinking differently. I'm here, I attended the neighborhood meeting in January, appreciated that opportunity. I'm here tonight to speak out in support of the form zoning. I'm thankful that that's an opportunity now because it allows for, I think, the dedication or the preservation of Outlot F, which brings a portion of those last remaining remnants of the Sand Prairie to be able to allow those to be protected. I'm also very supportive of affordable housing. My husband and I, we bought our house 30 years ago. And we were a young family then. We didn't have any kids. And even at that time, the housing costs were high, let alone what they are today. So I appreciate, what this allows to be able to provide an alternative types of housing. What I'd ask you to think about is that while this preserves some of the sensitive areas, maybe according to the code, there are some tweaks that could be made to the layout of these lots that would pull in more ground into that Outlot F to be able to protect these last remaining areas that still contain those sensitive areas that, Ann, that you talked about earlier. The special plants, the reason why the fence was put up there. So I ask you to think about that and to, as you look at this, I'll be honest, I don't quite understand what's allowed with T3 zoning or T4, but the lots that I'm specifically looking to see if those could be edited would be lots 148 through 39, 146. Basically those areas that border along the parkland, some of those lots are long. And if there was a way to make those lots shorter to still allow for development, we could pull in those slopes that still contain some of those last rare potential areas for plants, still allow for the housing. Those lots are a great opportunity for a homeowner because their lands, it would still back up to green space. But what it would do is rather than allow that area to be developed, rather than allow for it to be converted to turf, to just shorten up those lots. There's a drainage easement that's planned back there. And so that's one thing I would ask, that as you look at moving forward with the approval of the zoning, to make sure that it doesn't prevent the ability to shorten up some of those lots. Because I think that's really important. This is our last chance to protect what's left. I'm so appreciative of the partnership that we had before to be able to protect the large areas. It took so many years, it took so much work, but there's so much that got protected. There's a little bit left with a few tweaks that could be made where we could get more. And I ask you to think about that in your decisions in moving forward. The other thing I wanted to say is I appreciate in the staff's recommendation, one of the comments I made at the Good Neighbor meeting was to ask for the fence to be put up, so that we didn't have construction equipment moving into those sensitive areas. And I really appreciate that made it into the staff recommendation. So thank you for that. Thank you for listening. The last thing that I wanted to comment on is that as a strong advocate for the preservation of the Sand Prairie, it's also an opportunity to bring a rare area to people in the community and outside the community. And at some point, as we move forward, having a dedicated access that can provide
a nice opportunity, a safe opportunity. I would appreciate that. So thank you for the opportunity to present. Thank you to Navigate for the configuration of Outlet F. I'm just asking to see if we could enhance it just a little bit to match the existing topography and the existing vegetation. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Anyone else from the public like to speak? Do we have do we have a motion from the commissioners?
Because after a motion, we can discuss.
Right.
I'll move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Second. Do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Is it, I forget the order of things. Can we ask the applicant to respond to?
You would typically do that before you make the motion, but if,
We have another opportunity at the plating discussion too.
Yeah, that's true. That would be more appropriate than the zoning part. Yeah.
I think I'll just have a quick comment about the zoning portion. I think I'm generally a positive reception to the zoning. I don't see any real issues. I do want to talk specifically about some of the plating and I think how to kind of preserve and maintain some access to that Sand Prairie Park. But I think I support the notion of keeping that open space adjacent to the existing park to kind of better activate it. I think the density's good. It ties in well with the existing neighborhood, so I support the rezoning of this.
And
Billy?
I just want to say that I'm pleased that that area is now going to be developed, and the fact that it is going to be out of this plan, that we can do things other than just housing, that there is more restaurants and things like that in that area.
Anyone else? Good. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. We'll go on to case number SUB 25-008, South Village, location west of Weatherby Park and north of Sand Prairie Park, an application for a preliminary plat for South Village, a 56.35 acre subdivision of land to create 267 residential lots and 20 outlots. Sam?
Thank you. The next agenda item I will be presenting is SUB 25-8, an application for a preliminary plat for South Village, a 56.35 acre subdivision to create 267 residential lots and 20 outlots. Here we have an aerial map of the subject property. Next, we have a zoning map of the subject property. The subject property is currently zoned low-density single-family residential with the planned development overlay. As I mentioned, there is also a request to rezone the property to form-based zoning designations. As previously discussed, the subject property was included in a 2004 rezoning and preliminary plat application. In the original rezoning and preliminary plat, the applicant dedicated 17.4 acres of open space to the city despite only 2.4 acres being required. This dedicated open space allowed for the creation of the Sand Prairie Park. Between 2004 and 2022, final plat approval was given for 88.46 acres of the surrounding land to create 142 residential lots. In its initial rezoning and platting, the subject property was zoned OPD RS5. The proposed subdivision will allow for the subject property to be developed with 267 residential lots and 20 outlots, subject to the standards of the form-based zones. Here are some additional photos as shown from Sandusky Drive and Covered Wagon Drive. This is the area to be subdivided. It is currently one large parcel of land and is proposed to be subdivided into 267 residential lots and 20 outlots. The IC 2030 comprehensive plan designates this area as appropriate for residential uses at 2 to 8 dwelling units per acre. The proposed subdivision will result in a residential density of approximately 4.7 units per acre. The South District Plan provides a form-based future land use map, which designates this area as appropriate for T3 Neighborhood Edge, T3 Neighborhood General, T4 Neighborhood Small, T4 Neighborhood Small Open zoning, and open space uses. The proposed plat contains 267 residential lots and 20 outlots. The outlots proposed will serve as public and private open space, mailbox clusters, private stormwater and drainage, private stormwater detention, private alleys, and private pedestrian bicycle passages. The applicant has provided private civic spaces to be managed by the Homeowners Association in outlots B, E, H, and I. All private civic spaces have been designed in accordance with the civic space standards in the form-based code. The proposed plat features 267 residential lots that serve as design sites for house large, house small, cottage court, duplex side-by-side, house-scale townhouse, and block-scale townhouse land uses. All proposed residential lots will front either civic space or a public street. All design sites have been designed in accordance with the minimum and maximum width and depth standards for their respective zones. However, flexibility to the design site standards is allowable when the design sites are located on corner lots on non-rectangular blocks pursuant to Table 14-2H4E1. The Director of Neighborhood and Development Services approved adjustments to lots where their location on corner lots would make compliance with the design site width and depth standards impractical. Up to 10% flexibility in the minimum and maximum design site dimensions is allowable when the adjustment accommodates an existing feature. One design site was granted flexibility to increase the design site width in order to accommodate the street network of the project site. In the next few slides, we have some examples of the building types being proposed on these lots. This slide shows house large and house small. This slide shows cottage court and duplex side by side. And this slide shows block scale townhouses and house scale townhouses. Sidewalks and street trees will be installed along all proposed public streets. Additional pedestrian and bike connection sidewalks will be added to Weatherby Park. The proposed project features sidewalks at 5-foot and 8-foot widths. The 8-foot wide sidewalks will serve as part of an interconnected trail network. The proposed block lengths and perimeters have been designed in accordance with the block length standards for form-based zones. Outlots M, O, J, and L will serve as pedestrian bicycle passages on blocks where the length and perimeter exceed the maximum allowable distance without a passage, therefore making these blocks compliant with the block size standards of Table 15.3.4A1. Flexibility to the maximum length and perimeter of blocks is allowable when the street network configuration makes compliance with the block length and perimeter standards infeasible. Some blocks were adjusted by the Director of Neighborhood and Development Services, as the adjustment is required in order for the project to demonstrate compliance with the form-based future land use map and future thoroughfare map in the South District Plan. The proposed private alleys and pedestrian bicycle passages have been designed in accordance with the thoroughfare standards for form-based zones. The proposed neighborhood streets feature a 60-foot right-of-way, which is less than the 70-foot right-of-way prescribed by the form-based thoroughfare standards. However, flexibility to the thoroughfare standards is allowable. The adjustment to the right-of-way width was approved by the Director of Public Works and the Director of Neighborhood and Development Services. The proposed thoroughfares will connect to the existing streets of the area to create an interconnected street network. Traffic calming measures will be implemented on street lengths with longer block lengths. The proposed development can be accessed from Sandusky Drive, Birch Street, Prairie Heights Drive, Covered Wagon Drive, and Sand Prairie Drive. Staff received one piece of correspondence related to the subdivision request. Staff recommends approval of SUB 25-8, an application submitted by Prairie Heights Land LLC for a preliminary plat of South Village, a 56.35 acre subdivision to create 267 residential lots and 20 outlots. In terms of next steps, the City Council will schedule the date for the public hearing at the next City Council meeting on March 10th. Following that, they will consider the preliminary plat at future meetings. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sam. I'm interested in the connections between the neighborhoods and then the connection like to downtown and to True Blood. Could you show that on a map? It's too small for me to see, so you're going to have to kind of point it out.
One moment, please. Suppose we can pull up like Google Maps or something like that.
Yeah, I think we could.
Okay.
Do you want to show? We can pull up a larger map and kind of show it in the context of the larger area.
That'd be
Do
great.
you want to see the existing trails, pedestrian passages that are
Yeah, just so
proposed
that-
on the plat too, and the connections to Weatherby Park, or just kind of the larger area?
I'm interested in both, really. How does it connect to the existing area so that the neighborhoods connect to one another? And then, I mean, it's in an area which leads to a lot of activities to a larger neighborhood.
Yeah, there's connections to the street network here, 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 and here. Additionally, the 8-foot wide trail that leads to Weatherby Park will be along this area.
Is that a separated trail or is that?
It's a side path. It's like a wide sidewalk.
And let's,
So it will be coming
Show
in
the
front of,
pedestrian passages.
the pedestrian and bicycle passages are in out. Did I lose the
Oh, the arrow
arrow?
there
Excuse me.
and laser pointer.
Laser pointer. The pedestrian and bicycle passages form a straight line through here. You can see,
Okay.
where
right.
the block length and perimeter would otherwise be too long for the form-based code.
so is that the only one?
Those were the only blocks where that was required. Yes.
Okay.
We granted some block lengths flexibility, so they were adjusted. For instance, this block along here is very long, but it wouldn't be particularly meaningful to include a pedestrian bicycle passage that doesn't have a destination.
So what are the outlots? There's one outlot there that's very skinny. That's just there to meet a frontage requirement essentially on between 105 and 104, and then between 122 and 123.
What's the outlet? Can you read it?
Outlot, yeah. Outlot P, which leads into the Pepperwood addition, and then Outlot S.
Outlot P and S are both designated for private stormwater and drainage.
Okay.
Is there a way to get across Gilbert Street to the bike paths over there?
Yeah, I think the best way to do it would be, so this is a covered wagon that exists here. So you could take covered wagon down to McAllister and McAllister over to Gilbert, if you can imagine that.
Right, I can.
Or this is an extension of Sandusky here. So you could take Sandusky north over to, I think it's Cherry. And that takes you directly over to Gilbert.
Is there a sidewalk there to Cherry?
Cherry is, Cherry's a street.
Yeah.
And so there's sidewalks there.
From Cherry to, there are sidewalks on that side of the street already.
Yeah, along Sandusky to Cherry, along Cherry there to Sandusky. There's sidewalks.
Yeah, I was thinking about from, or what I'm thinking is along Gilbert. So it'd be, you'd come out,
Along Gilbert.
There's a cross.
There's a nice trail
there is a trail there already?
along Gilbert on the west side of Gilbert. There's a multi-use trail
Right, that's what I'm trying to get to.
from this development.
Yeah.
And there's the intersection right there at Cherry and Gilbert.
And so my question is there a sidewalk from this development to Cherry Street?
I think along Sandusky, then down to
This
Cherry.
this development doesn't connect with Cherry. I'm trying to bring up a bigger map.
Sorry, I can't see these small.
There we go. Can you see that? Okay. Okay, so this is the parcel, the subject property that's being considered, the one highlighted in blue. So right now, it's kind of an island. You really, it doesn't connect to anything. You need to extend Sandusky south, and then you can take Cherry Avenue over to Gilbert. Sorry, you probably can't see my arrow, but
I see where you're going though. Yeah.
Yeah,
I can
so-
see that.
there's no way. Sand Prairie Park is directly to the south, so there's not. None of the streets in the development provide a direct connection to South Gilbert. You either have to take Sandusky over to Cherry or Covered Wagon down to McAllister over to Gilbert. And that would get you to Terry Trueblood Park.
Yeah, that answers my question.
Okay.
That's good. Thank you.
Just kind of as we're talking about those roads, I think Covered Wagon is kind of a known road. Is the road design intent to be similar to that? Because I know that has both a sidewalk and a bike lane, kind of like integral into the traffic. Is it different than that or similar?
Do you know the sidewalk width for that?
Like the bike lane is like in the traffic lane essentially. It's just, but it's clearly marked and wide enough to accommodate both bicycle access.
John Marner at MMS probably has the answer to that.
Thumbs up.
Yeah.
Good evening, John Martin with MMS. Thanks, Ann. I appreciate the question. So it's a little hard to see, but you are correct. There's a wider multi-use path on the west, I'll call it northwest side of Covered Wagon. And right at the existing traffic circle, the recent traffic circle there at Sand Prairie Drive and Covered Wagon, it actually, the 8-foot trail bends and goes northwest. And that's the 8-foot trail that was referenced in the plan. It actually runs, we continue that up the extent of Sand Prairie Drive. So it ties into that trail system. And then once you get to the new traffic circle that would be proposed on the very southwest corner of Weatherby Park, that's where it transitions over. That 8-foot trail transitions over on the west side of that traffic circle. And then the trail runs along the north side of Sandusky until it gets all the way up to around the corner. And I just to the existing Sandusky, and just to add one other question, one of the conversations, and I can come back up later, one of the conversations early on with regard to that location of the 8-foot trail, whether it be on the north side or the south side, we purposely put it on the north side because most of the properties are side yards as opposed to driveways. The only driveways that would access that are, I believe, 260, and actually those are alleys, 260 through 267. So none of those have driveways. And everything else, as you can see along the north side of Sandusky, is actually a side yard. So the only impacts or pedestrian conflicts that you would have would be with the actual street intersections where there's marked intersections as well.
So parking for these residents would be on the street? Is that, or do they have?
Yeah, the streets are designed according to all the thoroughfare standards. Sandusky, Sand Prairie, and I believe Prairie Heights Drive are all designed as collectors, if I remember correctly. I'm pretty sure those are all collector streets, and then the others are all local streets, but they're all designed with that width that they can accommodate on street.
And if I could just jump in, they will have to have on-site parking too. The streets do allow parking for people to park on them, but the zoning code would require parking on site as well.
So there would be a driveway into their lot?
Not on the area that John is talking about. There would be a driveway. Some of it's off the alley, though.
Okay.
The area that he was talking about is having the 8-foot wide side path in an area where there's no driveway, or maybe one driveway conflict, as opposed to on the south side where there would be multiple driveway conflicts.
Okay.
So Sandusky, you classified as a collector. To be clear, that does allow on-street parking or does not?
All of these streets would allow on-street parking.
Correct.
On both sides?
Are they all 28 feet wide?
They are all 28 feet wide, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a one lane of traffic in each direction and parking on each side and no bike path. Is that correct?
That's what the 8-foot wide side path is
So
for.
the bike path is shared with the pedestrian, unlike covered wagon.
Covered Wagon has an on-street bike facility?
Yeah, they have a marked bike lane on covered wagon that is integral into the street. So it's
Okay.
like divided, it's a marked, just wanting to be clear what that road shows.
Do we have any other questions for staff?
You mentioned outlot, some of the outlets, and I forgot all the letters of them, but some of them were, is there any specific designs in mind besides just like general drainage and stormwater stuff, like public benefit of those, like open space? I don't know if there's playgrounds or isn't anything defined yet on that?
Yeah, so several of the outlots are private civic space that will have public access easements through them. So they will be usable by the public, even if your house isn't necessarily in front of it. And then additionally, the pedestrian and bicycle passages are also found in outlots, and those will also have public access easements.
Any other questions for staff?
I don't know if staff wants to take, I'm curious, just the response to like 148 through 39 there, that the member of the public was asking about shortening those back up, or if that'd be better addressed by the applicant.
Yeah, we worked with the applicant quite a bit on that. I'd like to hear what their thoughts are.
Sure, I can add a little more context to that. So this concept, and then the concept also that was presented at the Good Neighbor meeting, doesn't recognize or take into account some of the changes that we made early on in the process. So the traffic circle, the west leg of Sandusky, in some of the early versions actually continued what I'm going to say closer to Outlot F, such that those lots pushed back quite a bit farther. Through the process of working with staff, we pushed Sandusky back to the north a little more to allow for more of outlet or more ground to be included in Outlot F. So that wasn't something that the public saw, but it was something that we worked through with staff early on in the process to get to this point. I don't know if you have, it's not in one of those, but I don't know if you have the sensitive areas. It would be sheet 5 in the packet. It's the sensitive areas map. Early on, we also had our environmental specialist go back to the site to verify some of the original reports and some of the original sensitive areas study that were done. And if you have that sheet, it's a designated area with some purple crosses in Outlet F. I don't know if you have that available on the screen.
Do we have it?
Yeah, it's at the end.
Don't have it in the presentation.
You don't?
right
Okay.
now, No.
I'd be happy to bring this up, but if you don't have it, I'd be happy to bring this up and show it to everybody.
I'm looking.
It's in our packet, yeah.
It is, isn't it? So do you see the one I'm referring to? So the hatched area is the prairie remnants area that the previous speaker mentioned and that we have discussed. Again, our previous road alignment actually pushed the road closer such that those lots, the back of those lots was much closer to that boundary. It matches the existing tree line, some of those scrub trees that were, or some of those trees and vegetation that's in that area. So through that process of some back and forth with city staff, we pushed Sandusky farther away to allow for a buffer. And right now, it ranges anywhere from about 100 feet if you're at the backside of Lot 46 to about a 60 to 70 foot buffer on the backside of lots 40 and 39 between where the prairie remnants are actually located and have been identified and the back of the lots.
Thank you. That's helpful.
John, sorry, before you sit down, just to make sure I understand what you're saying. Like there's that, oh shoot, what is it called? It's overflow drainage easement or whatever. That's
Yep.
the dash line going through those parcels. Nothing could really realistically be built. Well, nothing would be built on that, right? And then maybe like a shed or something could be built behind it.
Correct. Nothing would be in the drainage swale.
Yeah.
Those would need to remain open so that it can pass overland drainage, again, from the west in the backyards. The intent of that is to make sure that any stormwater runoff from the back of those houses is all going to get in a drainage swale and drain towards the detention basin as opposed to draining out or coming back onto the Sand Prairie Park where it's immediately adjacent. You wouldn't be able to put anything in it. The area behind it could have sheds, play sets, things of that nature. The one other thing I'll add, just while I'm up here, the question came up about outlot P, I believe, and S. Those are overland. It's similar. Those are overland flow routes for drainage that's from the north end to the west to make sure that we're routing that through both an overland drainage swale and via storm sewer to get it into the street and into the collection system so that it can be routed into the stormwater detention.
Can I just clarify?
Sure.
So the outlet F now covers all of the existing Sand Prairie?
Yeah, so I don't know if you have the exhibit that has the,
It's
I'm
on
going
the
to call it
screen.
purple pluses.
Yep, I do have that.
Those are the prairie remnants that were identified on site. So that
Okay.
extra ground in between that area and the back of the lots is not a sensitive areas that's been identified. It's a buffer between those sensitive areas and the back of the lots.
And who makes sure that the homeowners don't come into that? Oh, that's where the fence is going to go.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And John, the fence line's at the backside of the residential lots, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Is that the pink dash line there? The fence?
The pink dash line is to the limits of disturbance, I believe.
Does it also correspond with where the fence will be or not?
The property line does.
Yes.
So basically the black line,
Yeah,
yeah.
great.
And there will be a diversity of housing, but how much of that is going to be affordable?
I'm gonna allow Gina to speak to that.
In regards to your question, Billy, we are not required to provide true affordable housing. We really want to build attainable houses. The trend recently is smaller homes, so more people can afford them, of course. We did some preliminary numbers, and we are looking at, so the house large and house small, I guess I'm going to just pick a medium range, is around 440 or so is what we're thinking. So that's very comparable to what's kind of in the surrounding area. We also have to build adjacent to homes that are already there. And so those have to kind of match up. As you get closer into the middle of the development, you'll see some duplexes and townhomes. We're hoping the 2-story duplexes and the ranch duplexes will be in the 350 range. Townhouses, we really want to get lower than that. We have house scale townhomes, so that will be like a narrow single family home, basically. We're looking at 315, and we have block scale townhomes. We chose to do all 4plexes instead of 3s and 5s and things like that. We're really hoping to keep those at 299, less than 300. And there is quite excitement from our sales team on the cottage courts, and I'll just talk about that just for a minute. There's 4 blocks of those. I couldn't tell you the total amount of the units that we have off the top of my head, but it's a concept of they will all be slab, and they will be a 1.5 story if they want, or just a 1 story. So it's kind of like an attic type feel, I guess, for the half story. And we are hoping to keep those in the 225 range. And so I was in Florida a year and a half ago in New Smyrna Beach, and I saw my first cottage court, and I made my husband stop on the street so I could take pictures of it. It's just very unique. So our sales team, and we're all excited to see how this is going to come together. It won't happen in the first probably 2 parts, but from thereafter, those will come into play. So we're excited about those.
Can you show us on this map where they would be?
Sam can probably point to them. They're the rectangular, the square type blocks up there,
Okay.
adjacent to Weatherby.
86, 85, 76, and 75, the larger squares along.
Thank you.
While you're on those, I was
Yes.
just relative to my question earlier about the open neighborhood, open, whatever it's called, sorry. 2 of those, 76 and 75, do you have plans to, Sam mentioned like the typology is cottage court, but that's what's open to commercial potentially? Like is there
Right.
anything?
You're right. The plan right now is to build the cottage court units. It's very interesting to do a development of this size at this point. This is going to take us 8 years, I think, to build all of these units. So the plan is to move forward on part 1 and see what sells. And we won't have every unit available, but see what sells. And we have to stay true to what this preliminary plat is as far as the units and things like that. But yeah, so right now it is planned for cottage court units, which is the 1.5 story. So if there's no more questions directly on that, I was going to touch on one thing with the Good Neighbor meeting that we did have. There were 26 people that attended. Sam was there, MMS was there, my sales team was there. It was a very good question and answer session, I should say. There was just so much uncertainty about it that when the neighbors could actually come and get an answer directly from an engineer or directly from me as to what's going to happen when I put roads in or the utilities, it was a very good question and answer session. I have to say, we talked about traffic calming measures, and of course I knew that we were going to do raised pedestrian walkways along Sandusky, that really long road. But I didn't think that we would really need them along Sand Prairie, which is the one that goes up and turns. And after talking with the neighbors, it was apparent that we're going to need raised pedestrian crosswalks. I was surprised at how many people talked to me about neighbors in their area that drive an extra 2 blocks so they can get around a walkway. So we had good comments and good feedback from the Good Neighbor meeting. I just wanted to touch on that. And I've had lots of comments with the neighbors. For this being an infill development, everyone is very welcoming and has worked really well with us.
Thank you, Gina. Does anybody else have questions for Gina? Or
Thank you.
I think I have question, not for Gina necessarily, more maybe for John, and kind of the combination of the city, and it's almost question and kind of comment boiled into one. But I think what I'm trying to get at is just some of the questions about access or even views or visibility to Sand Prairie Park. I think I have just concerns with the way the lots abut that park, that it just becomes forgotten. I'm looking at the comp plan, and it talks about, a sense of place and making sure that the park amenities, losing my train of thought here, but enhance, act as a key amenity and shape and enhance the neighborhood. And I'm just not seeing that with the current platting, and I'm just seeing some of the community comments about losing access or anything. And I know there's some sensitivity where you don't want to bring people in, but I'm wondering if there's any opportunity to introduce like some sort of break in just that long line of back-to-back-to-back houses that kind of butt against Sand Prairie Park, where it just becomes completely forgotten and out of view. I think it would certainly be enhanced from a neighborhood perspective from the other people to the north that are going to kind of lose those views. It seems like it would benefit them to have just a little bit of a break, like a little bit of a mini park, a place to gather, and it could probably be collected at those walkways that you mentioned, of just like a place where you can walk to and meet your neighbors and talk. I think it would enhance the walkability, which is, mentioned a lot in the South District comp plan. I know that we don't get a perspective from the Parks Department. That's kind of part of those conversations early. So I don't know if you can kind of talk about some of those conversations that have kind of led to the current platting, where you're kind of butting all of those lots right up against the park. I noticed in the comp plan map, you have a road and you don't have any lots that kind of abut to that park, so it becomes a much more visible feature to that neighborhood. And I think that's what we're losing here.
Yeah, and we had lots of conversations with Parks and Rec staff, and again, their real concern is that they want to limit access. They want the fence. They don't want to provide more access points to the park. That's why you're not seeing breaks between the lots. This is an unusual an unusual park. It's not a playground. It is more of a preservation area. And there's been conversations about renaming it to make it clear that
It's not a park.
it's not a place it's not a place to recreate necessarily. It's a preserve. So the areas where we have provided areas to congregate are all those civic space areas that Sam talked about, which are going to be small open space areas that are open to the public.
If I could just add one thing to that, you mentioned potentially the neighbors to the north losing visibility into the Sand Prairie. One thing that this plan does show in the north areas here is there is a sort of semi-dense tree line along those areas. And in the Good Neighbor meeting, some of the folks that lived in that area indicated that they wanted to have those trees remain as a result of this development. So I'm not necessarily sure that they would be losing views.
Yeah, and
from
I didn't necessarily mean that far north. I meant immediately north, just on the other side of the road. I mean, it just seems like if you could move one of the outlots to the south portion, you would create at least some sort of identity and view in along Sandusky, rather than just feeling like you're driving through any old neighborhood. Like you have some sense of identity in place that's retained by even just seeing like the prairie. And it doesn't, I understand you don't want to bring people in, but there's still ways, to potentially bring people in and provide a space for neighbors to kind of gather and appreciate. I think, one form of protection is really education and bringing people in where you can actually see it. I just think it becomes a lost asset at that point, where you just are putting a fence against it and no one ever goes in there. I mean, I understand from a wildlife perspective that has some benefits, but to me, it just seems like there's some concern from the Good Neighbor meeting that you're not providing a means of view or access to appreciate that really nice parcel of untouched land.
Outlaw S is just for utilities. That's not a connection because that's like a private parcel to the west.
By Sandusky.
Off of Sandusky, yeah. Outlaw S is like a little strip between 122 and 123.
Yeah.
This,
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question
oh,
one
just
more time?
there's a outlaw S between lots 122 and 123 that seems like it almost hints at what James is talking about with like a, you know, kind of a gap between lots, but that's not actually connecting to the Sand Prairie. It's connecting to a private parcel to the west. So that must just be like for drainage, not for
Yeah,
access.
correct,
Yeah.
correct. The western portion along lots 120 to 127 border existing single-family housing on larger lots.
And so Outlot I and Outlot H, those are intended to be kind of unbuilt open space, is that correct?
So the civic space type that is that those were designed for in the plat is a pocket park.
Sure.
In terms of amenities for those pocket parks, I'll let Gina and John speak to that.
With the pocket parks, it's really planned just to be open space with some beautiful landscaping and hopefully some flowers and things along those lines. I had mentioned playground at one point on some of the larger ones. We were concerned about them being so close to intersections, and the city was very much wanting to ensure that I funneled kids to Weatherby Park. So they are planned truly to be open spaces, greenery, and I can put benches, that would be fine, things along those lines, but yeah, just more open space.
But again, on any given day, Weatherby Park is pretty well used in that area. So you're adding another 267 units. Is that going to be a park big enough to accommodate all of those new?
I question that as well, and I would defer to the city who had spoken with Parks and Rec, because they're the ones that determine usage, and so I can let Ann.
Yeah, there were no concerns that this development is going to create an issue where Weatherby Park is not big enough.
Well, I know there's several celebrations that they hold there every year.
I understand, but the Parks never expressed concern that this additional housing was going to overburden the park.
Okay.
I would kind of agree. I mean, I don't know that there's ever been a park that's like too busy. I think vibrancy is a good thing. I think my concern is just we're losing those pocket parks essentially, you know, by where they are located in the busy intersection. So you're just losing that opportunity that is talked about in terms of walkability and kind of spreading those opportunities for open space and recreation throughout a neighborhood. And I think as platted, those kind of become a throwaway space to me. And I think by moving one of them strategically to that other side would be a really a benefit to the whole identity of the neighborhood. And I think you could easily provide a pocket park that still has a fence that abuts to the prairie. You know, that would certainly be a nice amenity, I think, to be able to be playing and still have these views to appreciate nature, and not just having a pocket park in the middle of an intersection. I don't know. It just seems strange to me. I would certainly like to have seen that version. I get a little frustrated now hearing a few times that the Parks Department has kind of suggested in some projects that they prefer not to connect to them. So I almost wish we could hear directly from Parks, but to me, it just seems to not quite fit the intent of the comp plan. I think a lot of it is really, really good. I just think there's really an opportunity here that is lost when you build that dense housing abutting that park, where you lose the identity of that whole prairie area.
Any further comments from the commission? Questions? We're going to open it up for the public. Is there anyone from the public who wants to speak? Amy?
Yes, thank you. Should I sign in again, or?
No, I don't think so. Do you have to? No.
Okay, all right, thank you. I just had a few comments that Amy Bauska, I live at 1049 Briar Drive. Just had a few comments on some of the discussion that's taken place already. One of the things that our neighborhood was really surprised to learn about the sensitive area ordinance when this development came back in 2000, when it first started after 2001, was that the sensitive area ordinance doesn't actually protect the rare sand prairie that's there. It doesn't protect special plants. What it does is it protects one of the things it protects is steep slopes. So when you look at that map that was up there, and I don't know if you can put that back up there or not, but one of the things that I'm bringing up is that there's area in there that's still in prairie vegetation that's not necessarily a steep slope, that's not necessarily protected by the sensitive area ordinance. And that's what I'm asking for slight adjustments with the layout of the lots. Rather than having those such long lots that come in, even though the sensitive area ordinance doesn't apply, can we tweak those to be able to make them shorter, rather than to have those areas graded, rather than to have that area converted into turf? Can we make those lots shorter? That's what I'm asking about, to see if there's a possibility for that. Because then I think you can pull in a little bit more of those last remaining special areas into the Sand Prairie area. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Basically from that drainage swale south.
Is looking at the existing land use map, looking at what's seeded. You know, the farmland's already been disturbed. There's wet areas in there, and then you move into the wetland, but really looking at those areas that are still being seeded, overlaying that, so that we can protect that last remaining remnant area that's there.
Could you go back to the map that we just had up? So, and pull it up a little bit.
Yeah, they can't.
So we can see.
Down to that, yeah.
Can't see this.
Amy, does that help you explain what you're?
Yeah, so if you look at where the purple line is for Outlot F, where the X's are, there's a tree line there, but then there's also another tree line that goes through lots like 46, 45, 39. Do you see that tree line that's on there? Mm-hmm. So there's still, in that area between where the purple line is drawn, between where Outlot F is, and between that green line that goes through those back lots, there's still some bit of greens, there's still some bit of vegetation there. And that's what I'm asking about. I appreciate that there's already been so much discussion about moving the lots already, so I appreciate that you guys have already discussed that. But that's what I'm asking about, is to see if there's any adjustments that can be made there. And then also, as you move around the proposed stormwater ponds, we're kicking into some of those, some of those areas, we're kicking into some of that, some of those areas that are currently vegetation right now that's not cropland. So that just those small tweaks to really look at the, to really bring forward, I think, the character and the intent to protect as much of the area as possible. Did I answer the question? Okay, thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Amy. Any other members of the community want to speak? Do we have a motion from the floor?
Before there's a motion, it'd be possible for the applicant to respond to the feasibility of what Amy's suggesting.
So I'm not necessarily going to respond to the feasibility. I just want to reiterate that the area that is being referred to is a denser vegetative cover. It's more trees.
Yeah.
As opposed to the open plantings. It's hard to see on that. I don't know if you can go back to the GIS. I mean, the tree lines are in there, but it's a lot easier to see on the GIS. And I don't know if you can go to the 2025 prelim. It's got a little better, or Sam, if you can zoom in on that area. So you can kind of see the edge of those trees that we're referring to. And right now, Outlet F essentially goes from that corner, the jog, and splits between those trees. And that's the area we're maintaining some of those trees. That's the buffer between the prairie remnants. So this isn't an area that has slopes, which is correct. One of the provisions of the sensitive areas is to protect slopes, steep, critical, protected slopes, sorry. But it also has a prairie remnants section, and that's the area that's identified on the map. But again, we went back through the historical or the previous studies that were done, the previous reports that were completed. We had our environmental scientists go back out to the site to verify, and that was what was identified as on the map with that the previous exhibit.
John, I got a quick question too about just the area that abuts that. So you've got that retention basin. Is there plans or plantings for that, or is that just strictly a empty basin?
It's a wet pond. It needs to be a
Okay.
wet pond. It's
Okay.
designed to maintain all the stormwater for the area.
So it will typically have water in it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there plantings planned around that?
I think there's street trees, if I remember it correctly from the packet, I think we have some street trees, again, along the frontage, so between the detention and the public roads. And that's, again, that site is right where that 8-foot trail is, or path is as well. So you have a nice tree-lined path right there.
I have one thing to add. While we're talking about the trees along there, Parks and Rec has been out for the last 2 weeks. They asked me for permission to access the scrub trees that we are looking at right now. They want to tear all those out. They've been working on it for the last 2 weeks. Scrub trees are not prairie, and they would like that all gone so they can, the purple area where John was showing. So eventually they will take that over and they will extend that purple area to make it true prairie. It's not prairie right now, so they have to take the trees out. That is currently happening right now. They have their equipment on Navigate land, and they're accessing it from that way, and all the scrub trees are coming out.
So basically all of Outlet F would then be converted to prairie?
Yeah, I don't know the extent of, what they're taking out necessarily, but I believe that they'll start where the purple area is, and then they'll extend, and all of Outlet F that will be, deeded to the city will become true prairie.
Cool.
Motion?
I'll move to approve SQB 25-0008 as recommended by city staff.
Second.
Chad, do you want to say anything?
I think there's a lot of refinement, and I think we'll always have desires for more refinement or more. I think the spirit of the form-based zoning is met. It's an effective use of the land. It has a good diversity of housing types. As Billy shared, different price points for the housing. And I think the spirit of the form-based zoning is fulfilled. So pretty excited to see it actually come to light after all this time.
Colette?
I would echo what Chad said. I like the variety. I happen to live in a neighborhood that has some of that variety, and I think having that variety is good. And it was good to hear. I had questions about Weatherby Park and just making sure that it could manage the capacity, additional capacity. And I trust that our experts who gave us that answer know best. So appreciate that.
I agree. I think this, mix of housing, infill, development, density, kind of range of affordability, connectivity to Weatherby Park is great. I think there's a lot to like, and I hope those lots 75 and 76 get a little ice cream shop or something someday, so the people in Weatherby Park can go over there. But and I think it's a great thing for Iowa City, so I'm in support.
Ice cream and coffee.
Yeah, both, please. Affogato.
I think I'm generally supportive too. I mean, I like a lot of it. I think I like the connection to Weatherby Park. I like the mix of housing. I like the density. I'm stuck on the losing the access and the amenity of that Sand Prairie Park. I think is a real lost opportunity, not only for the community but the neighborhood itself. I would really like to see. I mean, I'm looking through the comp plan and I'm just seeing, mentions of prairie and, there's one bullet point here that says promote events that focus on the South Iowa City's environmental assets, such as bird watching, fishing, prairie restoration, etc. I just don't understand how you can kind of promote events and access to that really nice natural habitat without at least without going over private property, essentially. So I would love to see a slightly tweaked version, where you are taking one of those outlots and putting it on the south. I understand that, it's a whole lot of internal discussions with the city and the Parks Department to get to this point. But to me, it just seems like so close to a really kind of good application of form-based planning. Just would hate to see that park kind of covered up and never seen again.
Billy?
I think it's a great idea for the additional units. Iowa City needs more housing. They need more affordable housing also, and that area has a lot of affordable homes in it already. So I just hope that we consider that, with this area, that they become more affordable, even though there are some with the big houses that are going to be unaffordable for any of us. Thank you.
Kevin, do you have anything to say?
I just like the attention to variety, and I think that it does meet the goals that we're going through with maintaining being good stewards of the land.
I echo what everybody says. I have to say, James, I wouldn't have thought of your concerns, but I agree that it would be, it's a shame to hide that. So I agree with that. Ready for a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous approval. Thank you. Our next item is a zoning code and text amendment, case number REZ 26-002, consideration of amendments to Title 14 zoning related to the minimum parking and open space requirements in the central business zone for the conversion of guest rooms within hospitality-oriented retail uses to residential uses. I am going to recuse myself as I own property within the Chauncey.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Schroer, and I'm a planner with Neighborhood and Development Services. For this rezoning, I'm first going to walk through some background and the motivation for this code amendment. I'll then talk about our parking and open space analysis, as well as the specific text changes that we're proposing. And then I'll end with our staff recommendations. So downtown Iowa City has a handful of hotels. They are primarily located in the CB10 and Riverfront Crossings zoning districts. There are 2 hotels in particular that recently have gone out of business and are sitting vacant. So that's the Hotel Vetro and Hotel Chauncey that are shown in pink here on the map. Both of these sites contain a mix of uses. They have commercial and office space in the lower levels. Then the hotel is kind of in the middle floors, and they have residential units in the upper floors. And I put a table here just so you can get a sense of kind of the inside of these sites. So at Hotel Vetro, there are 50 existing residential units and then 57 hotel rooms that are sitting vacant currently. Hotel Chauncey has got 60 units and then 38 hotel units that are sitting vacant. Both of these sites are in the central business zone. So they're located in areas that are walkable. Residents who live there have access to jobs and transit services, as well as the university, and are less likely to rely on a personal vehicle to get around in their daily lives. So Iowa City is currently experiencing a high demand for housing, and these vacant hotel sites provide an avenue towards increasing the city's housing supply if they are converted to multifamily residential. However, under the current zoning code, if these hotels are converted to residential, they would be required to add parking and open space beyond what currently exists at these sites. And this creates a barrier to development. Next, I'll walk through our parking analysis. So both of these buildings were originally developed with parking facilities. They have sites that are under the parking underneath the building, as well as access to public garages nearby. And both sites were designed to accommodate overnight occupancy, as well as the daily activities that are associated with hotel uses. So once again, if they are converted to residential use, our zoning code currently would require them to add additional parking beyond what they used previously. So the impact on the parking demand, if these hotel rooms are converted to residential use, we are not expecting the overall intensity of the parking demand to increase. The buildings are going to continue to accommodate 24-hour stays. They were originally intended for 24-hour short-term hotel stays, but we'll see them transition into 24-hour long-term residential stays. And this conversion is not going to introduce a new or more intensive use of the space than had been used previously. I just want to note our kind of current policies around public garage access. Both of these hotels have relied on nearby city-owned garages in the past, and we're not able to guarantee that future residents would be able to access the city-owned parking facilities if it is converted. And at the time of the residents living there, they would be subject to the city's permit policies and availability at the time of the conversion. So although we aren't able to guarantee that new residents would be able to access the city-owned garages, we do have other examples in the downtown where the city offers residential parking permits for nearby residents. So with this proposed change, staff is not anticipating a measurable increase in the demand on the existing parking facilities. The amendments also only affect 3 downtown sites. So they affect hotels in the central business zone. This is the vacant Hotel Vetro, Hotel Chauncey, and also the Graduate Hotel that's currently in operation. So these proposed amendments are able to recognize existing parking conditions while also maintaining the established function and feel of downtown area. Now for the open space analysis. The requiring hotel to residential conversions to add the required open space to the site can create really big financial barriers. The code says that for every bedroom in the multifamily, you have to add 10 square feet of open space. For each site, it's easily multiple hundreds of square feet of open space that you would need to add. So also the hotels do have access to nearby public space. Hotel Chauncey has got a really awesome rooftop area, as well as the Chauncey Swan Park next door. And Hotel Vetro is situated right on the pedestrian plaza, so residents who live there have access to the amenities on the pedestrian plaza. So exempting both sites from the open space requirements is not anticipated to negatively impact the future residents who live there. So our specific text changes that we're proposing, there are only two of them. The first one is in our dimensional requirements section. This is 14.2C4E. And all we've done is added a subsection that exempts guest rooms within hospitality-oriented retail uses that are converted to household living uses from the minimum open space requirements at the time of conversion. So two things here. We are not requiring these hotel to residential conversions to add additional open space, and we are also limiting the exemption to the time of conversion. So when the hotel transitions to residential, they will be exempt, but in the future, if that residential converts to something else, they will no longer be exempt. So our justification: the existing hotel buildings in the CB10 zone were developed with limited on-site open space. This conversion would require significant alterations to the buildings and is likely to be infeasible. So our amendments will remove that regulatory barrier to adaptive reuse while maintaining the downtown urban form. Our second amendment is in our parking requirements section. This is 14.5A.3D, and there's a table that outlines how much parking needs to be required based on the zone and also the use. So what we've done is added a footnote to this table, noting that hotels that are converted to residential in the CB10 zone are exempt from the parking requirements for multifamily residential at the time of conversion. So we are not requiring hotel to residential conversions to add parking to the sites, and we're also exempting them just one time when they are converted. The justification for these amendments: so downtown hotel buildings were typically constructed with parking arrangements that reflect their use, so the commercial, the hotel, the residential. Requiring additional parking for this hotel to residential conversion would create a significant barrier to adaptive reuse. So finally, our rationale for these amendments. The amendments remove specific barriers that prevent the adaptive reuse of vacant hotels. They exempt three existing properties in the CB10 zone from the required parking and open space requirements for multifamily residential. And they're also narrowly focused to the specific case of a hotel in the CB10 zone. And together, these allow the city to support reinvestment in underutilized hotel properties while also maintaining consistency with the zoning code. Our amendments are also consistent with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan outlines goals that seek to encourage infill development, provide a variety of housing options, and encourage projects that attract long-term residents. So our proposed amendments support these goals by providing a pathway to new multifamily residential uses at 3 sites in the CB10 zone. Staff recommends approval of REZ 262, which are amendments to Title 14 related to the minimum parking and open space requirements in the CB10 zone for the conversion of guest rooms within hospitality-oriented retail uses to multifamily residential use. Our anticipated timeline, if Planning and Zoning decides to move forward to City Council today, the public hearing will be set at the March 10th City Council meeting, and then the public hearing will be held at the following City Council meeting on April 7th. So with that, I'll pass it back to the chair.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
I have a question just about the potential for, I guess, a change back. Would any of these changes kind of make it difficult to change these back into hotel use? Or is that still, I'm just thinking, in terms of flexibility, if they're never developed as housing, you're not changing anything specifically about those units that would make it difficult to go back to a hotel use. Is that correct?
I think what would be difficult would probably be the building code, maybe, but maybe even not. I mean, zoning code, they can convert back to guest rooms without providing open space, without adding parking. So guest rooms don't require parking now in the CB10 zone.
Okay.
I think makes complete sense and is great. I'm curious if staff considered, it makes me think of office to residential, which is a national trend that's more common, it feels like, in downtowns. Did you guys think about that at the same time, or is this more predicated by a specific applicant that's like, hey, we can't do this if we have these requirements, kind of thing? Or were you guys preemptive with this, thinking ahead about that this would be a barrier?
It's more preemptive. We know that these spaces are vacant.
Yeah.
There's been some kind of interest in multifamily. We don't have any applications before us to convert anything. I mean, we are currently working on a parking study where we're looking more comprehensively at our parking requirements, and adaptive reuse is something that we're looking at. I think at this point, we feel most comfortable with keeping it pretty narrow, knowing that future amendments are going to be coming.
What is the timing of the parking study?
We should be getting our analysis in maybe a week or two. Let's see, it's February. It's going to be several months before anything comes before the commission, but we're plugging away. I don't know the exact schedule.
So would these now not be considered hotels anymore?
Right now, they're vacant hotel rooms.
Okay.
And so that's what they are. That's what they will remain until someone wants to do something different.
But they'll still be listed as hotels, Chauncey Hotel and Vitro Hotel.
It depends on the new ownership group. Okay. I mean, eventually we're anticipating someone will buy them and maybe convert the hotels to residential, and then there won't be a Hotel Chauncey. But that's for the new owners to decide.
I guess I have one question, and it's a little bit broad, but you talked about specifically the Chauncey open space, which is kind of a public-private open space, and I've always been a little bit curious about if there's any requirements for access to that, or if it's just kind of open-ended. I'm specifically talking about the rooftop, yeah. I mean, whether that needs to remain open to the public during normal business hours, or if it's just we can make it completely closed if needed. Are there requirements there?
So it is open to the public?
It has gone back and forth, to be honest, because not a lot of people use it. I've seen it used as, for private functions. I think I've gone up there and it's been open, and I've sat and had a nice view, and then I've tried to go up at other times and it's closed. So.
Yeah, and I know, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, Hotel Vitro also has, I've been at an event on there in an outdoor area in that building. But I don't know the answer to that. Typically, when the open space, the private on-site open space is required for multifamily, it's not open to the public. So
It gets listed
that
as
must
public.
be something
Sometimes.
created separate
Yeah.
from what we require in our zoning code.
And do you require at public or do you require private?
It's private just for the residents. What we require is on-site for the residents.
Okay.
One question, what is independent or assisted living? What, does that fit in hospitality or is that residential?
That's residential.
Okay, so if by chance this got converted, something like that, this would fall within these rules?
You know, that's an interesting question, Chad. I think we have written the ordinance as exempting household living, and I think that's classified as group living.
Okay.
Would it make sense to include group living? And just a quick,
Right, just the
That could be a good use
adjustment.
for like 55 plus or something, yeah.
certainly would be better to have no parking, I would think.
That would
That
be
that type
less
of
of a-
use
Yeah,
would
yeah,
need
less of a
less
use.
parking.
I'm just going to pull the code up quick.
Yeah.
Can you go back to the language that we had for the amendments?
It looks like elder apartments is included in household living uses.
Elder apartments, I think you were asking about independent living, though. Gosh, this is hard to do on a phone.
Do you know what section it's in?
Group living uses include assisted group living, fraternal group living, and independent group living. And I think, what's the footnote read?
Guest rooms within hospitality-oriented retail uses that are converted to household living uses are exempt from the minimum parking requirements at the time of conversion.
So yeah, it would not include that. If the commission wants to make that change, that's something that the commission could consider.
So you'd be adding the entire group living group? Is that correct? Like assisted, I see 3 group living types: assisted group living, independent group living, and fraternal group living.
Yeah, those are residential uses, but classified under group living. Yeah. So independent, like assisted group living would essentially be like a nursing home. Independent group living would be kind of like a single room occupancy boarding house type situation. And fraternal group living would be a fraternity or a sorority recognized by the university.
I don't know. I think I'm content in knowing that elder apartments is under household living. Is that your interpretation there?
Yeah, that's
So that kinda
multifamily.
covers independent living. The others would be, it would require like some sort of central, like,
Set up very well.
yeah, probably not.
Any other questions for staff? Do we have a motion or any public comment? Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Second?
Steve, comments?
Sorry, who was the second? Thanks.
No, I think it's great that we're, being flexible with and proactive with minimizing barriers to more housing downtown in a really smart location. So, yeah, makes total sense.
Concur.
Any other comments?
I think it's good we're finally using some of those rooms that are not being used.
Hopefully.
They're great places and we need housing.
Yeah, and increase the density downtown. Yeah.
Let's take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous minus Maggie. Who-
Any nays?
Oh, any nays? I don't think so.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, just double checking.
All right.
Go get she out there.
Yeah, see if she's out there. She may have, I told her she could leave if she wanted.
She took
Yeah.
all her stuff with her.
Okay.
Yeah, so I take her
There's
jacket.
missing.
So.
I'd say she's gone.
All right, well, you guys are stuck with me. Next up, consideration of meeting minutes for December 3rd, 2025.
Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'll abstain since I wasn't present.
Perfect.
Okay.
Next, February 4th, 2026 meeting minutes.
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Planning and zoning information, staff.
I don't think I have any updates.
I have a question or a request. I don't know what it is, and I don't know what it is in our power to request, but I would like to hear from the Parks and Rec Department. I think I've just have some concern about, some of their impact to planning and zoning matters in relation to the comp plan. I don't know if it's possible to get a presentation of kind of their priorities and understanding how that kind of fits into the comp plan and relates to zoning, or kind of just an open forum to kind of ask questions, because it seems like a lot of those discussions happen early in conversations with developers, and I don't, it seems like a lot of that gets set and it's tough to change. So I don't know, Anne, if that's within our right to request, or if there's anything that's any precedent to just foster a conversation with other departments to do a presentation or a conversation or ask questions and have some back and forth.
Yeah, I think the commission can certainly request that. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to come here, and I think it would just be helpful for me to clarify if it's, I mean, they have a lot going on. So if it's, you mentioned priorities, you mentioned how they interact with the comp plan and zoning, and if you could kind of make it more clear to me what specifically you want, that would be helpful for me and probably for them as well.
Sure. I guess I can maybe come back next session with a more specific request, but I think
Okay.
knowing that it's a possibility is good. I think that's something I'd like to just have the conversation and get their perspective, just because I think it does shape a lot of these discussions in terms of access and goals that are set forth in the comp plan, and making sure that we're adhering to those where possible.
Okay.
Or just suggesting a potential path forward. Would it make sense for James to get his thoughts together and just have a few bullet points of questions to share with you that you could share with the Parks Department? Or?
Yeah, questions would be good.
Yeah.
And I mean, because I'm just thinking, they have, public facility construction projects that they're working on right now. There's, they do a ton with maintenance, and not just parks, but right-of-way maintenance.
I think, yeah, it's specifically in relation to, I think,
New project.
zoning that and new projects that abut parks, and specifically in terms of
Sensitive areas.
access to parks, sensitive areas, other kind of priorities. I think that they are advocating for in these kind of preliminary meetings. I think
Okay.
Vegetation.
would be interesting to get their perspective, because I'm looking through, good neighbor meetings and notes from that, and there's clearly like a back and forth that we're not kind of exactly privy to, and the, Parks and Rec says, flatly no to access at certain times, which I think if you look at the comp plan, it certainly promotes access to some of those things. So I'd like to understand their perspective there.
Yeah, and I don't know, I guess, the chair can always request something. I think if a commission member requests it, then there needs to be, if the rest of the commission or if a majority of the commission here tonight agrees with that, I can reach out to. I don't think we need to take a vote. I'm just kind of taking it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
I think that's enough information. I'll reach out to them.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Anything else? Last up, adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
A second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.